celebrating 48 years on the air. Award-winning Farm Week is a production of Mississippi State University Extension.
Today on Farm Week for Thanksgiving, we look back 25 years at the wheel deal, FLYWHEELERS, 1999. In Southern gardening, feeling a little blue, Eddie Smith says that's actually a good thing. And we're back to the future, flash forward to FLYWHEELERS 2024. And finally, a food desert no more, a follow-up encore on this day of thanks. Farm Week starts right now.
Hello everyone, I'm Zach Ashmore.
And I'm Mike Russell. Great to have you with us again here on Farm Week. Happy Thanksgiving. It's well known that many of our viewers often get nostalgic about the good old days. Well, back in 1999, 25 years ago, Farm Week went to Houston, Mississippi for the FLYWHEELERS Festival. What is that, you ask? It's the wheel deal. Here's that story, and we pick up with the original intro on June 3rd, 1999 by former Farm Week anchor Artis Ford.
Well, you hear a lot of talk these days about the end of the century approaching as well as the millennium. Well, now it's an understatement to say that agriculture has changed in that time. There's a group in Mississippi that's working to make sure that the relics of our agricultural and rural past will be around in the next century. Members of the Mississippi Valley FLYWHEELERS Association collect, restore, and exhibit antique farm equipment. They gather in Houston in April and September of each year to let future generations know what the good old days were really like. Farm Week visited the FLYWHEELERS at their April show. To see them is impressive, but to truly experience them, you have to hear them. They're called flywheel engines, the name coming from the heavy flywheels that make them run. In the early part of the 20th century, they helped to modernize farms and businesses as American agriculture moved from manpower and animal power to mechanical might.
A lot of the old fellers, they get a kick out of it. They say, well, man, my dad had one of these, and I learned how to plow on one of those, and it just goes on, and that's what we're in it for.
I guess it's like collecting matchbooks or Barbie dolls or whatever you happen to collect. You can't get enough of them once you get started.
In addition to flywheel engines, the Mississippi Valley FLYWHEELERS Association devotes itself to the preservation of other historic agricultural equipment like tractors and farm implements. The association holds flywheel festivals on the last weekends of April and September in Houston, Mississippi. The events give the association's members a chance to pass on the history they've learned to children and adults. The festivals attract up to 25,000 visitors and exhibitors from 10 to 15 states. Besides the antique farm equipment, there's also an arts and crafts fair and a play area for children. In spite of their size and weight, the gasoline and kerosene-fueled engines develop a small amount of power by today's standards. For example, this 1917 Hercules 600-pound engine generates 1.5 horsepower. The metal flywheels provide the momentum to keep the engine in motion between the times the single-cylinder fires.
Every engine has a flywheel of some kind. You may not necessarily see it, which you don't now in cars and trucks and so forth, but it's still there.
In spite of their low horsepower, the flywheel engines were serious equipment for farms and rural businesses. Their heyday was from the late 1800s into the 1930s, when large areas of the United States did not have electricity. The engines could generate electricity, pump water, grind corn, and power anything which could be turned by a drive belt.
Well, they had one engine that pulled many machines. They carried the engine from one machine to the other. Now you have all machines, each one has an engine on.
Bobby McGowan remembers when a flywheel engine powered his uncle's machine shop in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. The oldest engine in McGowan's 17-strong collection is a 3-horsepower model built in 1909.
It will surprise you how these old folks built these engines with a hammer and a chisel and maybe a file. They didn't have the modern machinery to build it like we did.
This 1916 Galloway is the oldest engine in Ron Diffenderfer's collection. The television engineer caught the old iron bug 18 years ago.
They're just a whole lot of fun to play with. They're a lot of work to get them rebuilt, because usually they're pretty old. They're 50, 60, sometimes 80 years old. So, but I just get some kind of fascination out of that simple machinery operating.
They didn't have electric back in those days on the rural areas and even in towns. So they'd have a gasoline engine on the wash machine, and they'd have a big long extension pipe which they'd run outside. They'd run the engine inside, washing the clothes, and the exhaust would go outside.
Francis Werner says if you wanted a Maytag brand clothes washer in those days, it came with a 2-cycle engine. With attachments, you could do more with it than clean clothes.
Maytag was very large in the manufacturing business. They made a wash machine, and it didn't only wash clothes. The Maytag ground corn, it ground meat, it washed clothes. It had all sorts of attachments that went with it.
The owners and restorers of the antique tractors on display love their equipment as much as the flywheelers. It may be romantic to long for the good old days, but one has to remember farming was just as difficult a business when these tractors were new as it is now. They have a beauty, however, that can't help but evoke pleasant memories for those who remember when these machines were a part of everyday life. They proved to be the inspiration for 18-year-old Jason Pickens of Houston, Mississippi, to restore this Farmall tractor. It belonged originally to his grandfather, Jack.
It's a year 56 model. It's an LP gas, 300 Farmall. It was up under old cotton picker, but we took it out and changed the gears up on it so it can run forward instead of reverse. And I wanted to restore it because a lot of other people restored theirs, and I want to bring mine out here to show it off too, like everybody else.
There's an antique tractor pull on Saturdays as collectors pit their machines against the weight sled. It's not important who wins, it's the camaraderie that matters.
We come all the way from east of St. Louis, Missouri, which is in Belleville, Illinois, to this show because we love the people down here. The hospitality is fantastic, and you have a good crowd of people coming through.
It's a real close-knit group. You know, these people care about one another and enjoy being around one another. And that's one of the important things with our hobby, is just truly a social event at one of these shows for people who exhibit.
Believe it or not, the Flywheelers still exist, and they're still putting on 2 festivals a year. Zach was in Houston, Mississippi recently, and he'll have that story for you shortly.
Sometimes there's no better color in the landscape than blue in all its glory. This week in our Southern Gardening segment, Eddie Smith heads to Wesson, Mississippi, south of Jackson, for a little blue showcase. Here's Eddie.
Today, Southern Gardening is at Buds and Blooms Nursery in Wesson, Mississippi, where they have some plants with gorgeous blue blooms. Let's take a look at some of these plants. One of my favorites, Blew My Mind, is cherished for its striking, true blue, funnel-shaped flowers and silvery green foliage. This low-growing perennial is a heat-tolerant plant that thrives in full sun and makes a great ground cover in warmer climates. Gardeners in cooler climates often treat it as an annual. Another one of my favorites, Blue Plumbago, is a fast-growing plant admired for its clusters of delicate sky blue flowers produced in late spring through fall. It has a sprawling growth habit and is ideal for zones 8 through 11. In warmer climates, it can be grown as a perennial, while in cooler areas, it is treated as an annual or brought indoors for the winter. To promote more abundant blooms, plant in an area that gets at least 6 hours of direct sunlight and provide monthly feedings with a balanced fertilizer during the growing season. Lastly, The Peter III aster is a striking variety of aster, featuring daisy-like blue flowers that bloom in late summer and fall. This hardy perennial has a compact growth habit and thrives in full sun or partial shade. It prefers well-drained soil and regular watering, especially during dry spells. Deadheading spent blooms encourages continuous flowering. Suitable for zones 4 through 8, Peter III blue aster is cold hardy and returns reliably each year. As you can see, plants with blue blooms can make a beautiful addition to your landscape. I'm Eddie Smith, and I will see you next time on Southern Gardening.
We'll take a break right here, but don't go away. Coming up in our Farm Week feature, a success story in the Mississippi Delta, a Farm Week encore for Thanksgiving. In a part of the Delta long considered a food desert, a town that played a prominent role in civil rights history, a grocery store comes to Marks, Mississippi. It was a long-awaited follow-up to our news coverage of a grand opening that put smiles on the faces of everyone involved. And it showcases yet again just how extension matters. That's coming up in Farm Week. Don't go away.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations and their faith, and their right to make their own plans and arrive at their own decisions, and their ability and power to enlarge their lives and plan for the happiness of those they love. I believe that education, of which extension work is an essential part, is basic in stimulating individual initiative, self-determination, and leadership. That these are the keys to democracy, and that people, when given facts they understand, will act not only in their self-interest, but also in the interest of society. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations, and their faith. I believe in intellectual freedom to search for and present the truth without bias and with courteous tolerance toward the views of others. I believe that education is a lifelong process, and the greatest university is the home. That my success as a teacher is proportional to those qualities of mind and spirit that give me welcome entrance to the homes of the families I serve. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
Earlier, you met the Mississippi Valley FLYWHEELERS in 1999. Well, we decided to follow up all these years later and see what they're up to. And wouldn't you know it, they're still around. So we traveled back to the future for another visit. If you're a fan of old school technology, you'd feel right at home at the biannual Flywheel Festival in Houston, Mississippi. The Mississippi Valley FLYWHEELERS have been showing off their collections for over 40 years. Farm Week's been here before, but over the years the show's focus has changed from just flywheel engines to a celebration of all things vintage, and they're happy for you to come and see for yourself. Mr. Harry Collins is the current president of the organization.
This is our 43rd year to have the Flywheel Festival. This is our fall show. We have two shows, one in the spring, the last full weekend in April, and then in September, it's the last full weekend in September. And this will be our 43rd year. They started, I believe it was in Grenada, and after a few years, the mayor of Houston and another gentleman moved it to Houston, and it's been here ever since. We have a big time. It started out basically as an engine show. the single miss engines that they use to pump the water and do different things. That's what we started out with. We have a large engine too that we crank in the spring. And, but it's just brings back old memories of getting to talk about, how you did the older people. And then the young people sort of need to see some of this to see how, everything was manual. It was hands-on back in the 20s and 30s and even up into the 40s. But it's sort of progressed into a tractor show now, but they still have a few engines left.
Festivals like this don't stick around easily, and there's serious coordination involved. It takes community support to make it happen. Kirby Dindy's the vice chair of the Chickasaw Development Foundation, and they're the organization responsible for ensuring the Flywheel Festival keeps going strong.
The Chickasaw Development Foundation is the organizational side of the Flywheel Festival. We are proud to help present the 43rd Fall Flywheel Festival. The City of Houston, the Pilot Club, the Chickasaw Heritage Museum, and of course our foundation, along with the Flywheelers, the most important part, all come together to organize. And our job is to make sure there's meetings, there's publications, there's plenty of publicity out there, and just really to help get the word out and make sure we're all talking to each other to make sure the flow goes well. The main part of the festival is, of course, the tractor exhibits and the engines, but the CDF's part is just to make sure everyone knows where to be, when to be here, and how to get here. I've learned a lot over the past few years. I've learned to drive a tractor. I have shot an anvil, a cannon, and toured the museum many times, and I will say I now know what a flywheel is, and I'm super excited about living here my whole life and being involved in this group. They're a dedicated group, and they have a lot of fun. I guess my favorite part is just watching everybody come together as a community, watching the kids come over after school, just really enjoying themselves, and the food is really good as well.
It's a natural progression for a festival like this to widen its focus. In doing so, has attracted younger enthusiasts curious about the history and lifestyles of past generations. An example of that is Christian Bryant, who took up blacksmithing as a way to express his creative energy and honor one of the oldest trades.
Well, I just love history to start off, and the anvil that I use, but this is not my main anvil, I use my great-great-grandfather's anvil. And it had always sat in the old family barn, and I'd always looked at it. And of course, I watched Forged in Fire. I said, that's pretty cool. And I saw a certain guy on there who had a homemade forge, and I said, if he can do this, I can do it. So I just started playing around, and I figured out this is actually something I really enjoy. I could get into this. And at the time, I was leaving skateboarding, so I needed something to lean into to be creative, and I found blacksmithing. I haven't been forging but for the past three years, but I've been coming to this festival since 2014. There are flywheels, and then there are people who make ice cream the old-timey way. There are people that have, honey, and it's becoming about people hand-making things the old way, as well as preserving history.
If you decide to visit this festival next time it comes around, you're sure to see something you never knew existed, along with folks who not only are excited to see you there, but welcome you with open arms and invite you into their passion, the preservation of the past.
I like the old stuff. I like old things. I enjoy that. I enjoy preserving them and showing them around and, letting people see them. And it's just amazing. All walks of life, all different types of people walking and visiting with one another, and people that hadn't seen each other, for years and years meet up during the Flywheel Festival, and just seeing the stuff, the items that are there and talking about them. It's not really just one thing. It's just amazing to me. I think it's the people and the Houston. This is just down home Mississippi, America, right here. It's the way it used to be. Just good times. But it's hometown.
A reminder, the next festival is April 25th and 26th next year. If you want to keep up with the Flywheelers, head to Facebook and just search for Mississippi Valley Flywheelers.
And now a special encore story about a little grocery store in Marks, Mississippi. We're proud to say that MSU Extension was involved in helping to make Jeffcoat's Family Market possible. Here from producer Brian Utley is another example of just how much Extension matters.
If you wanted groceries, if you wanted any type of produce or anything, you had to go out of town to get it. Quitman County has the highest food insecurity rate in the state.
Basically, because we were a food desert, for almost 4 years, there was no grocery store in the entire county. That's a long time.
I grew up here in Quitman County. It's my home, and we have a couple of dollar stores here, but you know, they wasn't a meat market, a produce market there.
There's a lot of people in this county that are over 65, and they were having to pay people to drive them to the grocery store to and from.
It happened to me one weekend. I needed a lettuce to make a salad, and I thought about I got to go to Batesville just to get a lettuce, so I just did it without the salad that weekend.
Nobody can, you know, make daily trips to the grocery store when it's 20 miles away. Right now, oh, I forgot I don't have this for supper. Let me run to the grocery store, you know, a mile away is so beneficial.
I love seeing ribbon cutting. It's very exciting. The Extension Service, we may not create a job ourselves. I certainly did not open a grocery store, but we were a part of the puzzle.
With Dr. Rachel Carter, who's part of the Extension program at Mississippi State University, I reached out to her because I went on your website and read about how the Extension helped communities. Getting the grocery store open was a high priority for the Board of Supervisors and for the Board of Aldermen with the city. And so she was able to give me statistics that this area could support a grocery store, looking at the data.
Morris is such a small town. When you look at a town at that size, you actually have to look beyond the city limits. You have to look at the whole county, but you also have to look at what we call the trade area, which is where people tend to shop and basically form a community.
We have a demographic of people with high diabetes, heart issues, just a lot of health disparities. And I think that was pointed out in the research that was done through the Extension.
One reason a grocery store in a rural community is such a big deal and such an important deal is that it can help address health issues, because people need to have access to healthy food options and fresh food options in order to make healthy choices. And so that's a huge issue with keeping a small town together, is having a local grocery store.
It was a big thing, and I kind of expected a lot of people. I have a lot of friends just from the Delta that wanted to come and, you know, congratulate me, whatever. But I didn't have any idea that there would be like 4 different television stations there. But that was a little bit on the surprising thing. And
I think we got the right man in the grocery store. He has a grocery store in Tunica that he opened and was running, and said he was looking to open another one. He just wasn't exactly sure where. So when the building came up for sale, they really started courting him.
I think we have a great opportunity here. It's the only store in town, the only store in the county for that reason. There have been stores here before that didn't make it, so I have to I have to say to myself, you know, what do I need to do that no one else did? And I mean, I'll tell everybody I don't hunt, I don't fish, I don't golf, but I really enjoy what I do, and no one has to make me go to work, so I want to be there every single day.
It took the entire community, and I will tell you that a whole bunch of people never thought it would come to pass, but it is wonderful. I can tell you it's nicer than I've ever seen that grocery store.
Best in town, this the place. This was the best in town.
I really enjoy taking care of customers. You can't get too busy for me. I mean, just say if the store can hold 300 people, bring in 500, I don't care. I've done this all my life, and if I get the people around me, it's going to work. I mentioned to you that it's not me, it's the people that make the difference.
It's providing jobs. I mean, like, he only brought 2 people from Tunica, so everybody else that he's hired are locals. So it's an economic impact, you know, positive economic impact where, you know, that's huge for Marks, Quitman County in general.
It's bringing jobs, opportunities for people to work. maybe Equipment County is going to come back, move forward, bring other opportunities here in the area. Since that store opened, the traffic have picked up in Equipment County. It's going to be a tax base for the town of Marks to really do improvement.
It brings me to tears to see the progress. With the opening of the grocery store, we got about 40 jobs. It is definitely a ray of hope, a spark of hope to have jobs come into the community.
A great job by the community leaders in Marks, Mississippi, with a little help from MSU Extension. Congratulations. Well, next week on the show, another trip back in time, 2001 to be exact.
The poultry industry is Mississippi's top commodity, topping out at more than $3.5 billion a year. And it's not just an industry for men. Women have helped grow the industry over the years to be the state's leader.
We'll meet, so to speak, 3 of those women, all of whom had a strong beginning at Mississippi State University's Department of Poultry Science. Women in Poultry, a look back next time on Farm Week.
Remember, if you missed a story, look for past episodes of Farm Week on our website at farmweek.tv.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and YouTube. See you next week. Thanks for watching. Happy Thanksgiving.